Hi, this is Private Citizen Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. Always warm, always sunny, sometimes Colorado. Wanted to make a video about where we're at in the Chang roadmap and how we're going to move through the interim and bootstrap eras to finalize the folding turning on-ish of Voltaire. So this is going to be a whiteboard video and a screen share. So let's get right to it. And here we go. Wow. All right. So the source of truth of all things usually starts with GitHub. Hold on to your butts. We're going for a little dive. So this is the SIP repo that the foundation manages, and this is the SIP for 1694. And if you take a look at the list of authors here, Jared, Andre, Matthias, Kevin Hammond, myself, Sam Leathers, and many contributors participated. Take a look at the acknowledgements page. You can see all the workshops that were held. And when you click on each one of these, you can see all the different people who participated. And what's so cool is that a lot of these people are now going to be DREPs or already in the Constitutional Committee. Okay, so anyway, if you read through the SIP, you'll see the goal, all the things in scope, out of scope, shortcomings in the Shelley design. And guess what? This is live. It's no longer hypothetical. It's no longer a proposal. It is the real deal. So within the SIP, it has this concept of a bootstrapping phase. And let me just go ahead and find that for you. Bootstrapping. OAVST. Okay, so in the bootstrap phase, I just had it. Bootstrap and other ideas, path to activate. I was just reading it earlier. Let's find it for you guys. Constitutional Committee, committee keys, terms, guardrail scripts, incentives to vote. Here it is, the bootstrapping phase. This is where we're at right now. We are in the bootstrap phase. Bootstrap. There's so many documents and there's so many things going on. It's just a phase, Mom. All right, so we're in the bootstrap phase. We will need to be careful about how we bootstrap this fledgling government. Well, congratulations, the fledgling government is alive and well, so who you calling fledgling? All the parties that are involved will need ample time to register themselves and to become familiar with the process. And you say, what are these ample parties, Charles? Well, I'm glad that you asked. So here is a short introduction to SIP 1694. I'll share a link to it from Essential Cardano, and thank you, Mark, for putting it together. There are 5 roles describing community member participation and governance: DREPs, Constitutional Committee, stake pool operators, delegated ADA holders, and the do-nothing crowd, the non-delegating ADA holders. Those are people that refuse to participate in governance. And these are the governance roles here. Okay, so special provisions will apply in the initial bootstrap phase. Firstly, during the bootstrap phase, a vote from the Constitutional Committee is sufficient to change the protocol parameters. Probably not going to do it, but yeah, a majority of them can. Secondly, during the bootstrap phase, a vote from the Constitutional Committee together with the sufficient SPO vote, it's that same 70% you guys know and love, is sufficient to initiate a hard fork. So there's the first question of, well, hang on a second here. What hard fork are we initiating? That's it. Not sure why. There we go. Okay, so there's this idea of a hard fork that's coming, and we call this hard fork Chang +1. Oh, we can do better than that, can't we? Yeah. Microsoft is not being nice today. You know, I was using Linux for a long time, and I went back to Microsoft. They said, oh, it's easier. But that's okay. There's no mistakes. There's only happy little accidents. Chang +1 is what we're talking about. And we are T minus 90 day-ish from it. Ish. Okay. And we'll get to that in just a second. All right. Thirdly, actions will be available. Info actions will be available. No other actions other than those mentioned in this paragraph are possible during the bootstrap phase. Well, what can we do in general? Well, what you can do in general are these 7 things: a motion of no confidence, it's done by the DREPs and the SPOs; a new constitutional committee or quorum percentage, which is done by DREPs and SPOs; updates to the Constitution, which is done by DREPs and the Constitutional Committee with a very high threshold; Hard fork initiation, DREPS, Constitutional Committee, and SPO. Protocol parameter changes, DREPS, Constitutional Committee. Treasury withdrawals, DREPS, Constitutional Committee, and info actions. So during the bootstrap phase, the phase we are currently in, now that Chang is in motion, basically what's turned off are Treasury withdrawals, new constitutional committees, updates to the Constitution, motions of no confidence. And basically, people can turn on the hard forks, they can change protocol parameters, and we can do info actions. And the idea is that when we turn on full governance, the Interim Constitutional Committee with the SPOs for Chang +1, which is now counting down, the DREPs are enabled. So right now, as a DREP, you can register during the bootstrap phase. The bootstrap phase ends when the Constitutional Committee and the SPOs ratify a subsequent hard fork, that's Chang +1, enabling the remaining governance actions and DREP participation. So at that point, we have full government turned on. This is likely to be a number of months after Chang. Yeah, about 3 is what we think. Although all features will be technically available at this point, additional requirements for using each feature may be specified in the Constitution. Moreover, there will be an interim constitutional committee with a set term that runs till next year, also specified in the Ledger Next Era configuration file. The rotation schedule of the first non-interim committee could be included in the Constitution itself. Note, however, that since the Constitutional Committee never votes on new committees, it cannot actually enforce the rotation, which is always nice when they put that in. Okay, so we have a T minus 90 days for Chang +1, and at that point, DREPs are on. And we have a full Cardano government. Now, let me just see if this works. There we go. Got it. And then we have a full Cardano government. Okay. So currently, right now, we're in the bootstrap phase. People are registering DREPs. And we're going to see lots and lots and lots of them basically getting activated. And then after Chang +1, we will have a tripartite government. TriGov. Okay, you're going to have DREPs. You're going to have the Constitutional Committee, which is still interim, and you have the SPOs. And at that point, you have 7 Gov actions. We have the guardrails. And you have the Constitution. And right now, it's the interim Constitution. Okay. So this is going to be, roughly speaking, December, depending upon what that T minus 90 day-ish schedule looks like. Around the same time, there's some other stuff that's going to be snaking its way into the node. So node is going to get Genesis. How about that? Couldn't quite get it in with Chang because there's a few last minute things we had to do. So Genesis and some other improvements are also going to sneak their way in. This is kind of the last mile of Cardano's full decentralization. And it fully realizes the potential of Ouroboros. Now, while this is occurring, there's another thread that's going on. It's already active. Workshops are being held for the Constitution. And those workshops are right now discussing the draft Constitution. And they're going to have notes and questions and delegates. Each workshop is electing a delegate. There's more than 50 in 50 countries. Okay. And then come December, we're all going to go to Argentina. And those delegates are going to form a constitutional convention. And that constitutional convention, each delegate gets 1 vote. So everybody is equal there. And they're going to vote on a proposed version 1 constitution for Cardano. Now, this will happen right around the same time that Chang plus 1 is coming online. And you'll notice from our little infographic that we have here that once bootstrap phase is ended, we can actually update the Constitution when the DREPs and Constitutional Committee are here. So these 7 governance actions can happen. And lo and behold, they're going to have this proposed new Constitution ready to go. The full government is ready to go. And that means that this government can now vote to ratify the V1 Constitution. Now, in this Constitution, it's going to specify new rules for the Interim Constitutional Committee and potentially rules for SPOs and DREPs and other such things, although unlikely that much will change from the design of SIP 1694. So the one that'll be under the highest scrutiny, of course, will be the Constitutional Committee. What this then means is there's going to be a phase of what I like to call Constitution debt. And the Constitution debt is that we're running on SIP 1694, but we now have SIP 1694 plus new Constitution. And that new Constitution actually may change some of the designs of the on-chain government. So we actually have to fix that. And that's going to be a task in Q1 and Q2 plus of 2025 as we work our way through it, perhaps even longer, depending upon how ambitious the community wants to be with the Constitution. The other thing is that the Interim Constitutional Committee members' terms will run up, and that means a new Constitutional Committee will be fully elected. Okay, so currently we have 7 interim ICC members. Some of those members may choose to seek re-election. I am a member of the ICC through Input-Output Group, as is Intersect, and many people you people have elected. IOG at this point here, and I'll use a colorful, at this point, this very colorful point, will be completely out. So we're not going to have any role, no role. We will not have any DREPs, will not support any DREPs, and we're not going to serve on any constitutional committee. We're kind of taking a governance timeout. Okay, so we're here for the transition now that SIP 1694 is in place, and we have to go through the bootstrap phase. We have to kind of turn on the DREPs alongside all the other ICC members, including the ones you've elected. And we have a ceremonial role in assisting getting the Constitutional Convention finalized. I've already gone down to Argentina once. I will return in October for final preparations, and I will be there in person in December to welcome all the delegates and to help facilitate the Constitutional Convention. And then the Constitutional Convention will create a proposed V1 Constitution to ratify Onchain. Once ratified, new Constitutional Committee is elected, and 100% of the members in the entire Cardano government are now under this new Constitution that the community has written through all their workshops, discussed in a Constitutional Convention, and voted on chain. That's kind of the last governance mile. Now, there's another thread that's happening in parallel, and that thread is the budget process. And people have asked about the budget process a lot. Okay, so there's 2 ways you can run an on-chain treasury. And the on-chain treasury has approximately $600 million, give or take, of ADA, worth of ADA, depending on the market cap. So it's quite a bit of money. And one way is, and we didn't specify this in the SIP because it's up to the on-chain government, the Constitution, to decide, but you could just do treasury withdrawals. And there's kind of guardrails about how those work, but you can just withdraw things as they come. Or what you can do, and this is the preferred way for anything at scale, is to do an annual budget. You kind of break it into 2 stages. So an annual budget, create a pie graph, and then each slice in the pie is for different things. not to scale. Okay, so maybe there's dev and marketing and research and legal and I don't know, HR, blah, 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 blah. You have an annual budget, right? And so there's actually a budget committee at Intersect right now. And what Intersect's budget committee is doing is creating through SIGs, what are called special interest groups. And they're like DeFi, so all the DeFi applications, NFTs, core dev, et cetera, all kinds of things. They're basically collecting requirements and they're putting together a proposed budget. All right. And that proposed budget comes with all of the accountability and oversight requirements and other things. And so there's the spending that you have for actually doing stuff. And then there's going to be a slightly larger budget sliver for audit and oversight, making sure people actually do the job that they're being paid to do. So anyway, all that's being consolidated and put together, and basically it's going to be put to a vote. And the vote, here we go, protocol right here would then be the treasury parameter, the treasury withdrawal. Now, what does this functionally mean? It means that, let me find my whiteboard. Oops, turn off my ruler. Okay, so what does this mean? Well, the vote basically means that you have two stages. Stage one is the movement of funds, and stage two is into institutions and entities. Okay, so institutions and entities, what does that mean? So Catalyst is an example of an institution. People are often asking, well, what does this mean for Catalyst, for example? Will we continue Catalyst? Well, that's actually up to you guys through your elected representatives. So the DREPs that you pick will ultimately have a say on the proposed budget and whether they choose to accept it or reject it. If it gets rejected, then it goes back to the budget committee. They work on it again, and then eventually people will get frustrated and competing budgets will come, and eventually will converge to a budget. That budget may have a wedge that includes Catalyst. It may not. If it does have a wedge that includes Catalyst, Catalyst will continue operating as an institution of our ecosystem the way that you know and love it. If it doesn't get funded, Catalyst will be sunset and disappear. It's very much the same for development. What's going to happen is that in parallel, IO is starting to put together a coalition of devcos, and my hope is to get more than 15. And that coalition of devcos is going to put together a vision for Cardano 2.0. So basically all the new future tech plus maintaining the protocol. And there's a lot that's going to be in this, and I'll have a dedicated presentation about it likely in October, just trying to figure out where I'm going to do it. And a lot of logos and a lot of different companies in this coalition. We'll get them all together. Basically, that coalition of devcos is going to go, and they're going to say, okay, well, this is how much we need for the dev and research part of the proposed budget on an annualized basis for us to go and deliver X, Y, and Z. And here's the accountability and oversight for that. And that'll kind of give a first crack at these things. And it'll be nice because it'll be a mixture of small companies and large companies, and small ones, names you've all heard and get excited about. And the hope is also to break it into different categories and things like that. But that's an example of an entity funding, and it would be a coalition of entities with an audit and oversight capability, basically to now be the development coalition behind Cardano. And there's a lot of goals there, like improving the architecture of Cardano and a new node design, going polyglot and supporting multiple languages, getting all the scalability stuff on a long-term roadmap, and also investments in a lot of nascent technologies like roll-ups and these types of things. So it's going to be real exciting and real fun. Well, it's the same for coalition of marketing. For the first time ever, we can now actually talk about marketing and branding of Cardano, growth hacking of Cardano, and people can put a coalition together, and there's been some discussions about different groups of people doing that. And there's actually a marketing and committee at Intersect, and people are having some discussions there. So these are examples of SIGs. Court Dev, that's a SIG. Marketing is a SIG because everybody cares about it. Institutions are also things like the CF, Intersect, and other such ones. And they can request funding too as a SIG into the proposed budget. Now, the budget has to get approved. We don't know the size. We don't know, who's getting funded. We don't know the audit and oversight. This is why there's a budget committee. If you're interested in this, it's an open process. Join Intersect, join the working groups, and I imagine that you're a member of a SIG. Very easy to join Intersect, very easy to participate in Intersect. There's a Discord. You can go to intersectmbo.com, take a look at it. Intersect doesn't have a monopoly on this process. The minute I say something, people always purposefully misinterpret it and go Insta-drama. So stop it. This is just a convening function where it's proposing the first annual budget as an example on how to do this process and to bring all the different people together. The reality of SIP 1694 is that anyone can propose a treasury withdrawal with a governance action. It's up to the Constitutional Committee and DREPs to establish precedents for how to do that. My advice to the ecosystem during this interim period, as we're bootstrapping and turning things on, is to memorialize an annual process, because then you can have maximum flexibility here, and you can have outflows of capital on a daily or weekly basis, even with institutions and entities like Catalyst, for example. But then you can have a systematic and deliberate process involving lots of credible people and an ecosystem-wide conversation on an annual basis of what should we spend, why should we spend it, what are we trying to achieve, and what is our 2025 strategy as an ecosystem. You're not going to achieve a 2025 strategy by people coming to the Treasury 1,000 times a year, asking for each of their little things to get funded on a case-by-case basis, saying, well, this will be good for reasons X, Y, Z. The budget must always be prepared with a strategy, a marketing strategy, a dev and research strategy, a legal defense strategy, et cetera, et cetera. And there are institutions that exist, and the reason they exist is support functions to basically assist and help these things get along. This is also where we discuss the compensation of the government. DREPs and CC members. Okay. And so this does mean, because the DREPs and the CC are the voting class that are going to ultimately decide whether a budget passes or fails, they are absolutely going to be involved in the budget process. And already members of the Interim Constitutional Committee are serving on the budget committee as well at Intersect. So it's almost like a Ways and Means Committee passing it off to a House vote after they've done the heavy lifting and hard work. So this is happening in parallel, the Constitutional Convention, with the turning on of the bootstrap government. People are already registering DREPs. The Interim Constitutional Committee is waking up. It's been elected. It's in office. And the budget process is underway. These are the three things that all are in process and all have to conclude before end of December at our current velocity and pace. Okay? So an enormous amount is going on, and there's hundreds of people across multiple organizations that are having these discussions, working with these things. These are the minimum requirements to have an actual functional government with Cardano. Okay, you can't have a government if you don't have the ability to fund initiatives, the ability to make decisions that are inclusive, and integrity at the core. Now, there's a lot more to do. There has to be an EDI measurement of Cardano at some point, end-to-end, full EDI, to measure our level of decentralization. There also has to be some notion of effectiveness of decision-making, efficiency, and integrity. The integrity of the system flows from the final constitution that we draft. Those are the rules of the game. And If you follow the rules, the system has integrity. If you don't follow the rules, they don't have integrity. Effectiveness is what are the outcomes of the decisions your people are making. Okay, so if you're voting for DREPs, for example, that you want to maximize the price of ADA, or they want to maximize the adoption utility of ADA, well, the effectiveness is basically those metrics. And you can look at a period of time, did it go up? Efficiency is how fast we make decisions and if we make decisions. So that's a speed metric. So one is an outcome metric, one is a speed metric, and one is a philosophical metric. These are the three different anchors you can look at governance from. And as you're voting for DREPs, and I'll show you how we're going to do that in just a second, and voting for constitutional committee members, and you're participating in constitutional workshops, and you're participating in the budget committee, always keep these things in the back of your mind. The reason we have institutions is institutions lubricate your effectiveness and efficiency. If we tried to, from the bottom up in a completely decentralized way, do a budget process, it would be absolute abject chaos over Twitter. That's why you have a budget committee and something like Intersect, and it convenes everybody, brings all the stakeholders together, and uses modern management techniques to be able to get people to effectively talk to each other to get to a yes-no vote. And if they can vote on yes and no, it's a lot more efficient than 1,000 piecemeal votes. So you get a fast outcome. And if there's good people in the room here, which is why I'm inviting everybody to participate, you have to come, you get an effective outcome, meaning we actually have a strategy paired with the budget instead of piecemeal funding like wrapping private jets. And if you have a constitution, the Constitutional Committee can look at this budget against the Constitution and validate that we haven't violated some philosophical component of the Constitution, some of its integrity. Okay, so good governance requires an interplay of good institutions, high participation, and elected government. This is what I said 2 years ago, and this is actually what we've implemented. EDI is very important because it's an example of a North Star. So as a DREP, if you serve as one or Constitutional Committee member, you're going to ask, when we look at like the roadmap of Cardano, the budget of Cardano, what is this doing to the system as a whole? So for EDI, are we increasing the level of decentralization? Or are we decreasing the level of decentralization with this decision or protocol that we're embracing? There are other North Stars that we can look at. Some people use the value of the coin as a North Star. Some people use the speed of the system, the throughput of the system as a North Star. And North Stars can contradict each other. Things that improve the decentralization of the system may lower the price or may lower the throughput. Things that decrease the decentralization may increase the price. Who knows? So the interplay and relationships of these things is where the governance debate of your elected representatives is really going to be happening. And when we discuss the strategy, and true innovation is where you have trade-off free progress. You improve decentralization, but you don't impact the others, or you positively impact the others. So all of this by end of December. And then as we enter 2025, there will be a development coalition that you guys have approved if the budget's approved. And that development coalition has a mandate, a roadmap, a strategy, and an audit and oversight mechanism. Hopefully there's a marketing coalition, a branding coalition, and they have audit and oversight and a strategy that's behind it. And you have a functioning government that is made up of thousands of people following a constitution. And the developers are tackling whatever constitution debt was introduced at the Constitutional Convention for the new variant. And then we have a self-evolving minimum viable governance system. Okay, so every year the SIPs will improve. The coalition will get larger as the value of ADA grows because there's more development resources. Branding and marketing bring more people into this. This forms the flywheel, and we get more efficient, effective, and we preserve our integrity because there's integrity preserving institutions inside the system. It's an enormous amount of work, what people are doing. And when I say this is a big deal, we thought a lot as an ecosystem about conflicts of interest, about where things can go wrong, what stalls decision-making, the right balance between the will of the mob versus the will of the constitutional elected representatives that are preserving in the institutions of the system, and also didn't want to give monopolies to any institution. In the Constitution, there's no special provisions or mandates for things that have come before. IOG, the CF, Intersect, Catalyst, all these things have no mention or provisions in the Constitution. Okay? So what that means is that they live and die solely by their effectiveness and preservation of the integrity of the system and contributions to the efficiency and decision making. If you feel Intersect is not a good organization, it's not doing its job, well, guess what? You guys can get rid of it by just defunding it. Same for Catalyst. The CF you can't defund because they have their own treasure chest, but at least you can exclude them from things. And it's the same for IOG. We'll try to be the head of the coalition or a co-equal partner with many different companies. But if you say, we don't think that coalition is going to get it done, well, then say no. And you're in charge, because the D-reps are basically either you directly or somebody that's representing your voice. And nothing gets done without their consent. Same for the Constitutional Committee, who are extra special involved in the integrity of the system. They care a lot about the Constitution. So this creates the ultimate accountability that you're looking for and the oversight you're looking for. It's a difficult process. It's going to take time for people to get used to it. And if you want to participate, here's how you do that. You have something called GovTool. GovTool is the kind of the reference clients, like the data list of governance, and people are already building their own systems for this. And it gives you the ability to view governance actions on the Cardano blockchain, gives you the ability to view a list of D-reps that are registering on the blockchain. You can see the result of governance action votes. And again, those governance action votes are these 7 types of votes that exist there. And then it enables you, and let me go to the starting guide here, getting started. And basically, there's a step-by-step instruction here with GovTool. You can download a compatible wallet. All the wallets are currently getting online and turned on for this. This is another reason why you have bootstrap phases. We have to get everything ready for mainnet. They were on SanchoNet, which was the test net. People are now making their final preparations to get these things running on mainnet, but they'll be available before Chang +1. And basically, you just connect your wallet, and then you have the ability to vote. And if you're a D-rep, you can vote with GovTool and all this stuff. So highly recommend you guys take a look at that and play around with that. It's, as I said, going to be a whirlwind of activity. We're all working really hard here to get the last things done. Once the bootstrap phase is done and the new constitution's in place, every single person's there for merit. Every single person's there because you voted for them. Every single person's there because you like them. And if you don't like them, you have the ability to get rid of them. That's magical. When we discuss the Constitution, there's also a question of cadence of innovation. Do we have some regularity behind a constitutional convention? That's going to be something that's discussed at the workshops and at the Constitutional Convention itself. Should we do it every 5 years or 10 years just to kind of do a temperature check and see that? Or should we just amend the Constitution on an as-needed basis? And also, how much of the Constitution can be made machine understandable? It's a hard question because there's a delta between what humans can understand and what computers can understand, and how much formalism is possible with ambiguity. So this is going to be a big conversation that is held. And then also, what are the priorities of the ecosystem? We have to do some polling. The budget process gets the priorities out. People start talking about it more freely. And then what will always happen is D-reps will be purpose-driven, and they'll get elected to represent an interest or viewpoint. And their job is to be very loud, and their job is to actually have an opinion and be aggressive about that opinion and push for that to go through. So we'll have not a lot of participation right now with budget. People will start waking up and realizing that there's a lot to do there. People who want to be D-reps will start grandstanding and come in, and they'll start influencing the process, and the budget will start changing, and it'll ebb and flow, and eventually we'll get to a starting point. And then we as an ecosystem will have an adult conversation. And if we can get that through, then the entities have certainty, funding, and they'll continue moving forward. Or you guys can just decide to move in a very different direction. You could decide, for example, to just burn all the ADA inside the Cardano treasury, defund everything, and stop all protocol development. That's the danger, and that's the promise of governance. It is completely in the hands of the community to decide where to go and what to do. I have always believed that this community is one of the brightest and most capable in the Cardano in the broader cryptocurrency ecosystem, and I do believe that you guys are going to make great decisions. You just need a little help, and that little help comes from institutions like Intersect, like the CF, and others whose job it is to kind of look at what's going on and help get to yes/no questions, as opposed to come up with a grand strategy, because it's insanely hard when you really think about it to be an expert on everything. What should be our growth strategy in Senegal? What should be our growth strategy in Baku? What should be our growth strategy in New Zealand? Even if you're an expert in one of these jurisdictions, you really have intimate knowledge of all of these things, of these particular places, especially the city of Baku. Do you even know where it's at? Let's be honest here. So no one's smarter than everyone. And the point of a deliberative process is to bring everybody together and have everybody have an adult conversation, and then start delegation of authority, and then have institutions help refine and deal with the complexity. The other thing is institutions create legal character to bind people outside of the ecosystem to, either for contracts or for services. There's a lot of third parties that couldn't care less about cryptocurrencies who are master accountants and lawyers or subject matter experts in certain things. And by these structures, we now have the ability to reach into them and bring them into the ecosystem for the greater good. So Chang was the most significant milestone in the history of Cardano, but like all things, it's an invitation for a growing pile of work. The difference is now the growing pile of work is a public concern, and all the dirty laundry is in the public, and it's of the commons, and it's being worked on in the open by many hundreds of people across many different institutions, and we're working on it together with one voice and one mission, I would believe, to make Cardano the #1 cryptocurrency in the world, and to bring utility to the and future economic, political, and social systems to everyone that are fair and free. So I hope we can get there. And if you want a different mission, well, participate in Constitutional Workshop and go to the Constitutional Convention and get a constitution ratified and drafted that reflects your values and your principles. It could be, number go up. Just that's the only words in the Cardinal Constitution. And if you want that, great. You'll lose a lot of people along the way, because there's no reason to be in Cardano anymore then. But maybe that's what you care about, and fight for what you care about. The point of governance is to give people the freedom to say those things and do those things, and you have to win people over. Just because you have the freedom to say it doesn't mean people will follow you or listen to you. So you have to be persuasive about where to go and what to do. So I hope this elucidates a few things. It can be very complicated, but if you're just an everyday user, GovTool and your wallet, they'll come together. Most wallets are building governance interfaces. We're doing it at Lace. So eventually you'll just see an update and there'll be a governance panel, and it's that simple. And you don't have to do much more. And DREPs will kind of look like SPOs in terms of the user experience. If you're more sophisticated, there's a ton of documentation about how to become a DREP yourself, or do command line stuff, or whatever it happens to be. And if you want to be hands-on, you can participate in the workshops, you participate in Intersect, participate in particular committees, be a special interest group, lobby and fight for those ideas. It's in your hands now. There are no excuses. It's all there. And again, at the end of the day, regardless of which institution proposes things, it has to go through on-chain scrutiny. For example, there's a constitutional convention. The delegates there do not have the ability to unilaterally ratify a constitution. They have the ability to submit a constitution, but you do too. So hypothetically speaking, we could go through this entire exercise and some other constitution could come out of the ether and then get ratified, even though it had none of the workshops or anything. Now, in practice, that likely won't happen, because social consent and consensus is a momentum-based exercise. So you have to have the workshops and the discussions and the delegation and these things, and include people and bring them along the way in order for you to actually get to a yes in a decentralized system. What is inconceivable to bureaucrats and governments and other people, who, especially those who try to regulate cryptocurrencies, is they don't seem to understand the nature of social momentum. They think there's some guy that just sits at the top, has total control and dominion, makes all the decisions. And that's not true in any organization, even centralized ones, but especially so with decentralized protocols. Rather, you start rowing, you're not moving, and more people start rowing, and more people start rowing, and more people, and eventually the boat starts actually picking up speed and moving in a direction. And a large ship, once it gets speed, it has a lot of momentum, and it's hard to change that direction. And it's absolutely true. A person in a paddle boat can kind of come around, but if they come up with that large ship, the ship's going to crush them, because that's the nature of social momentum and movements. And cryptocurrencies are no different from that perspective. So do understand that, and do understand that if you want change in a system, going to Twitter and barking about it will accomplish nothing. If you want change in a system, going to Reddit and barking about it will accomplish nothing. You have to have persuasive arguments. You have to be open to collaboration and participation, and you have to participate within the institutions, processes, and governance systems that already exist. Now, you could argue they're not fair or democratic, in which case, then your only options are leaving the ecosystem or revolution and a contentious, uncontrolled hard fork, as we've seen before in the cryptocurrency space. And we may come to that. The effectiveness and efficiency of a governance system should also mean it's an inclusive governance system. So when governance actions are made, most of the people, whether they agree with the decision or not, agree to the legitimacy of the body's ability to make those decisions. So never forget that, and always realize that. So I'll be traveling extensively. I'll be in Japan to carry this message there, Singapore, carry this message there. As I mentioned, October, I'll be in Argentina, and we'll see where else I am. And then in December, I will be at the Constitutional Convention, and all of that bootstrapping and ceremonial role and facilitation role has then been satisfied. And at that point, I am, just like all of you, a private citizen, already feeling that, in the Chang era. I've noticed the criticism starting to ratchet up dramatically. I guess I have no technical skills. And I apparently don't manage developers at IOG. I guess I just sit here behind a microphone with a lobster and talk to people. Oh, well. But that's natural. People are jockeying for position and power because they realize there's no king. And they want to carve out their own little place. And they typically do that by attacking those who no longer have the ability to really defend themselves. So anyway, thank you so much for listening. It's been a lot of fun, and it's going to be a long close of the year. We got a lot to do in a very short period of time. Cheers, everyone.